City Council chambers for a regular meeting. This meeting is also being broadcast. We'll get started with the invocation.
a little bit more specific than a resume. And then they went through an assessment center. They were given an employee problem to handle. They were, of course, given an emergency situation where they arrived on scene and had to work through those processes. They gave a presentation on what they saw as the biggest challenge that we were going to face in Washington City in the fire department and how they were going to get through that. And they had an interview panel. And they had to give me a written paper on what they were going to accomplish in their first few months as a captain if they were promoted. And then I had a chance to sit down and chat with each of them. What you have before you are the top 3 candidates out of that process. We are very blessed. We had 9 phenomenal candidates, and these were the 3 that rose to the top. So we're excited to promote them and make that official. So we very similar. They took an oath of office when they first came in the fire department, and we basically refresh that and go through that process, and then they have somebody that will pin their new badge on them. Fair enough. And then we're going to leave them for you to you can grill them for a couple minutes. Oh, this way, yeah, right. I do solemnly swear that I will support, obey, and defend
Do solemnly swear to support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Utah.
the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of Utah.
That I will discharge my duties with fidelity.
I'll discharge my duties with fidelity.
Congratulations. I know that each of them have somebody to pin their badge on, and I get the opportunity to do one of those, which I don't get to do very often, so I'm pretty excited. So will you go get who, we could have had you bring them up here, but they don't want to stand up here as much as you do. Oh, that's not yours. For some of them, this is their opportunity. It's all about the angle of the sharp object. So to have some plausible deniability, no matter how it goes. So they wore a dark shirt just so that you'll never know. Keep their secret. No. They get some brass, some bugles for their collars as well. That's a tradition out of the fire service. Back in the day, of course, before we had radios, they still had to communicate with a lot of people, and they basically used a big horn. And so it really signifies 2 of those. One of them is the tradition from back in the day when they used that. And the other is to remind them that they're now a leader and they need to share information to prepare those behind them. So they should be that sounding beacon as a mentor and a coach. So they'll have those to wear on their collar as well. I don't know if you want them.
I want a picture with them. If you could all stand right there, if David could get a picture with them, we want to remember this moment and recognize them.
Yeah. And we want to thank the cheerleaders for giving us a chance to participate in your state championship. That was very fun. So, thanks.
Captains, if you'd just stay there for just a moment. And Brandon, would you or would you like to say anything, or either of you would like to say anything to first of all, who's all here to let's start with this. Firefighters in the room, will you just raise your hand if you're firefighters? Thank you for being here. Now, what about family members of these 3 new captains? Can you raise your hand, family members? That's fantastic. I'd just like to give Captain Moore, Captain Proctor, and Captain Webster the chance to say anything you'd like to, and maybe field any questions that the council might have for you.
Well, I just appreciate the chance to, I guess, continue to grow with my position in the fire service. I've been with Washington City for 12 years, so it's just a good opportunity to take that next step. I guess if there's any questions for me, but I'll let Mr. Webster.
So Tom Webster, I too am also excited to grow with the city. I've seen the city grow. I've been on for 16 years. Excited to be a part of it and move forward and watch the city grow. Thank you guys for all the work that you do, you put forward. We appreciate it and I'm excited.
I'm Josh Proctor. I used to work here 10 years ago, put 5 years in then. I just moved back and was given a great opportunity to promote this time. I believe the fire service is a brotherhood, and we have such a wonderful culture here at the department that we treat it like family, and I'm grateful that I get to be a part of this family again, and glad to be here. Thank you.
Well said, captains. Round of applause. At this time, we'll move on to item 6, Planning Commission appointment. I'd like to bring forward the name of Latai Tupou, who has served as a planning commissioner for the last 6 months. I'd like to bring forward her name to fill another term on the Planning Commission. I would also like to recommend that Cody Mitchell fill the remainder of the term recently vacated by Brian Musso, and that he would serve as the alternate in voting. I'll be happy to hear any discussion or a motion to that effect.
Mayor, if there's no discussion, I'll make a motion that we approve Cody Mitchell and Latai Tupou to the Planning Commission.
We have a motion by Councilmember Coates,
I second that motion.
and a second by Henderson. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Congratulations, Commissioners Tupou and Mitchell. We look forward to you representing us well. We also appreciate all of those others who had applied to be part of the Planning Commission, and we look forward to future opportunities with them.
Cody's here.
Oh, excuse me. I got a little ahead of myself. I'm still a rookie mayor. And I missed item. I was so excited to get to the swearing in for the firefighters to become captains that I missed the consent agenda. So the consent agenda, moving back to item 4, is for approval of the minutes from city council meetings on January 12th, January 18th, and January 19th, 2022, and for a final plat for Finley Farms Phase 1B. I'll call for a motion if there's no discussion. I don't see another final plat on there.
There is.
The other final plat, I should have refreshed mine. The other final plat is for the View Phase 6 at Coral Canyon.
Mayor, I have reviewed the minutes, and I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda as outlined.
I have a motion by Ivy,
Second by Coates.
second by Coates. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda is approved unanimously. And back to item 6B, Planning Commission. I'd like to bring forward the name of Jason Hansen to continue to serve as the Planning Commission Chair. I'd be happy to entertain a motion to that effect.
Mayor, I'll make that motion that we make Jason Hansen the Planning Commission Chair.
I have a motion by Coates,
Second.
second by Casperson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 7 is a resolution, and just as a reminder on resolutions, we'll do a roll call vote. At this time, I will turn item 7A, which is consideration to approve a resolution of Washington City Council regarding rights and liberty. Councilmember Kim Casperson.
All right, before I read the resolution, excuse me, I just want to share some statements that were made at the meeting where the Washington County Commissioners passed a resolution of placing trust in individual health decisions and establishing a policy against lockdowns and mask mandates. Dr. David Blodgett, director of the Southwest Utah Public Health Department, said, "It's always been about personal responsibility. We all have had a responsibility to understand what this virus means, what it can mean for others, and what it can mean for those who are exposed to it. Providing that education and understanding of the virus to the public has been the goal of the health department from the beginning, so individuals can know how to best protect themselves and others while living the best quality of life possible. However, government interference can become a roadblock to that endeavor. Often and almost always, it's too much government interference in that process that doesn't further that goal, but makes it much more difficult. Mandates get in the way of good public health policy, which is to inform people on the best way to take care of their own health." Close quote. I just want to share one final statement that was made by the Washington County Attorney Eric Clark. He said, "It is interesting to see how some people in positions of authority are tempted to abuse their power and start telling others what is best for them during times of crisis and uncertainty." Close quote. I agree with these statements. I feel like the mandates have not only caused division and discord, but they also have caused some hardships for many of the residents in our community. And I know this because I've spent a lot of times knocking on doors and visiting with people in our community. And I think we should all show respect and kindness to each other and the choices that people are making, and that they're just trying to do the best that they can. And with that said, I will go to the resolution. Whereas Washington City, its mayor and city council employ hundreds of individuals and wishes to avoid situations in which Washington City's employees, officers, or elected officials are unaware of the city council's commitment to and understanding of liberty and individual rights. And whereas the Constitution of the United States and Bill of Rights protect fundamental rights and liberty endowed by our Creator, and whereas the Constitution of the State of Utah establishes that all people have inherent and inalienable rights to enjoy and defend their lives and liberties, to acquire, possess, and protect property, to worship according to the dictates of their consciences, to assemble peaceably, and whereas the separation of powers set forth in the constitutions of the United States and Utah are to assure the preservations of liberty, and whereas the government derives its just powers from the consent of the governed to secure the rights and blessings of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and whereas civil liberties face grave dangers of curtailment when governments declare indefinite or repeated states of emergency, and whereas nationwide and within the state of Utah, governmental agencies are imposing mask and vaccine rules and mandates, and whereas the members of the Washington City Council have taken an oath to obey, defend, and protect the Constitution, and the City Council supports the principles upon which the United States is founded, namely the separation of powers, individual rights and liberties, and the rule of law. Therefore, be it resolved that the Washington City Council supports individual choice in healthcare decisions. Therefore, be it further resolved that as it pertains to the health decisions of Washington City's citizens, employees, or officers, the Washington City Council does not support mask or vaccination mandates.
Thank you, Councilmember Casperson. Any comments, discussion? Otherwise, I'll be happy to call for a motion on this resolution.
Mayor, I think this is a good resolution. I appreciate Councilwoman Casperson for working on this resolution, and I'm ready to make a motion if.
So I want to make one comment before you begin. As far as the city's concerned, I just want to make the comment that this is the way that the city has handled its employees as far as mask and vaccination from the beginning. So this wouldn't be a change, but it kind of clarifies the position of the city.
Thank you, Manager. Council member?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve resolution R 2022 dash, do we have a number for this one?
It might be number one. Our recorder could tell us.
It's number 5.
Number
Okay.
5, resolution R 2022-05 regarding rights and liberties.
Great. We have a motion by Councilmember Coates,
Mayor, I second that motion.
a second by Councilmember Henderson. We'll do a roll call vote. Ivy,
Aye.
Coates,
Aye.
Henderson,
Aye.
Casperson,
Aye.
and Martinson.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to item 8, council assignments. We have a new council member, and I'd like to recommend that Councilmember Ben Martinson have the assignments of the Washington City Youth Council, the Community Education Channel, the Washington County Flood Control Authority, Washington City Investment Audit Committee, and the Washington City Employee Board of Appeals. If there's any discussion on that, otherwise I'd be happy to entertain a motion to that effect.
Mayor,
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the council assignments for newly appointed council member Ben Martinson.
second that.
I have a motion by Ivy, a second by Coates. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. And it's time to go to work, Ben.
I was going to fight you on the Washington City Youth Council, but
That's a good one.
You know, Councilman Martinson, you've done a lot of work in this community for a long time, so this is nothing new to you. You're gonna do great. Item 9, city business. This is consideration to approve the change of Washington City building office hours. City Manager Jeremy Redd.
Thank you, Mayor. I think most of you read the briefing document. For those in attendance, I'll go through it briefly. The city has done a lot in the last 2 years with COVID to allow our residents to interact with the city via technology, and we've seen that be very successful. Because of that, we actually have seen a decrease in the number of people who interact with the city office on a daily basis. That being said, we do have residents that come and interact with us, especially in the utility office, the court, and in the development and building offices of our city. So those residents, there's been a request that we open a little earlier and stay later so that we can accommodate them and their work schedules. It's also something that the employees are in favor of and would be happy to do. This only applies to our building here. The other buildings in the city have different hours, of course, community center and public works, based on the needs of the people who use those facilities. But since this is the main city office, and I wanted to make sure that we had council approval and buy-in for that. So the change would be to change the hours from Monday to Friday, 8 to 5, to 7:30 to 5:30 Monday through Thursday, and 8 to noon on Friday. So that would just affect those offices that see the public here in this building. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Questions for the manager?
So me and the manager have talked about this. I wouldn't say a disagreement, but philosophy is that I am sometimes concerned that if we do half days, that we might not get a full half day worth of work sometimes, because it's just human nature of get in there, get ready, get geared up, and you only have a short amount of time to be productive. Now, I know we've discussed this a little bit back and forth, and so that's just one of my concerns with moving this forward. I'm all about trying new things, so I'm not against it, but I'm concerned that we are not going to get as productive a day on Fridays that we would. And I know, Manager Red, you can tell me that you think we're going to get more production on a Friday. I've just seen it in the workforce that I work in, the private sector, is that Fridays aren't as productive if you did half days in the industry I've been working in. So we have chose not to do that in my industry. On the city side, I do like that we're opening early and closing later, because it helps people who get off work be able to come and pay their bill at 5:15 right after work or whatever reason. So I like that, but those are some of my concerns, I guess. So I just wanted to bring up that discussion to the council.
And I think your concerns are valid. I think that management wise, we'll make sure that we address those. We did this for over a decade in my previous community, and we had really good success with it. In fact, I found that a lot of times people would come in when they knew they had 4 hours to get that work done by the end so they could start their weekend. They were very productive to get in, get it finished, and closed up for the week. So that's what I saw in previous experience. But we'll watch that.
Yeah, I think that's all I would ask, is that the managers and the department heads understand that, hey, we're not here to mess around for 4 hours on Friday and just get out to the weekend. Let's put as productive a day as we can on that Friday and help. So that's my only concern.
Any other thoughts?
I'm just thinking that it might be a time, I don't know, it's not exactly their hours, but for training or for something like that, it may open up an opportunity too to have that Friday open if there was ever a need for training or for special events or something. As a school teacher, I worked Monday to Friday and, was off at noon on Friday. And I know that there's an element of work too that all of us exhibit, and that's workplace stress. And, we deal with it. Our employees are the best anywhere. I think if you've interacted with them, you know that. But I think that I do note Councilman Coates' concerns. Those are valid. But I also feel like that Mr. Red does a great job of managing our employees, and I'm comfortable with this moving forward. You did say that the employees are okay with it, Mr. Red?
Yeah, they're very supportive. I would mention that we'll begin this likely the 14th of February. So we have a few weeks to let residents know and make adjustments, and then we'll start on a Monday if approved.
And if there was ever a time where a resident needed to be here on a Friday afternoon, they could reach out to you or the recorder, and we can make arrangements to meet with them.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So I do have a question. What if we have an employee that it just doesn't work for their schedule? I guess I'd hope that you would work with them.
Yeah, and we've been batting this around for quite some time, and we've spent quite a bit of time discussing it with the different departments, and I haven't had any feedback that it wouldn't work, especially for those who are working those sort of front desk areas. We can be a little bit more flexible with those who are not, interacting with the public on a day-to-day basis. But
I just would hate that if someone had if we had a single mother or something that worked and had to get their kids, I would hate that we're adding hours on the beginning and end if they have to do some of those items. So just pay attention to that. And
absolutely.
Thank you.
Great points. Great discussion. Further discussion or a motion?
I was just wondering if this, that we can change back if you find that you run into a lot of issues or something.
Sure. Yeah, we can always make adjustments. And one of the things that came up is could we do this but run all 5 days? And we really don't quite yet have the staffing to do that with vacations and any sick leave and those kind of things. But as we grow as a city, I think we always look for ways to be more efficient. So we can adjust if it's not working or something else would be better.
Mayor, I wonder if the council would be interested in like a 90-day trial period and then revisit it and see if we've heard anything from the residents that maybe we need to readdress it, or if not, then we'd have a little better indication that it's working well for all parties.
Thoughts on that?
I'm not opposed to a 90-day, but I think Manager Ed will bring it back if there is if we have concerns, or if the council's hearing about it, we can always put it on agenda. I just don't know if we need to say, hey, in 90 days we want to report back.
Yeah, and I guess for me it's just making sure that if there's an issue that we address it. So I don't necessarily need a 90-day for myself. It was just that hard stop that.
Can we put it in a work meeting and just have it on a item to check off and see how it's doing in 90 days? I'm open to that. I just don't want to take.
We don't need an agenda item for council for that, I don't believe. So
I'm happy to bring it back, even just in my report, to let you know how it's going in 90 days.
That's good.
Sounds good. Sounds like we're ready for a motion.
Mayor, I'd make a motion to approve the change of Washington City Building office hours from Monday through Friday from 8 to 5 to 7:30 to 5:30 Monday through Thursday, and 8 to noon on Friday.
I have a motion by Ivy,
I'll second it.
a second by Casperson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. We'll move on to item 10, award of bids. Item 10A is a consideration to award a bid for Washington City Long Valley Sewer outfall materials. Assistant Public Works Director, Lester Dalton.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is kind of an interesting one. We typically don't go this route with bids. We'll typically bid the project as a whole for materials and installation anytime that we're doing public works projects. But our current our current delay that we're seeing happening with numerous projects right now, just because of the supply chain issues. You know, we're not even complete with design with this project yet, but we are to a point where we know what the majority of the materials are. And from what we're seeing in the market right now, everything has been an extensive wait time. So what we're trying to do is prevent a delay to this project and get the materials here in Washington City on the ground, ready for installation. So we put this project together, just a materials only quote for the pipe and manholes associated with this project. We advertised this, we opened bids on the 18th. We received a total of 5 bids. It was kind of what we anticipated, that, you know, we'd have different suppliers with different, within the different industries that would be submitting for different materials. So we had pipe suppliers as well as manhole suppliers that submitted for bids on this, and we've got a recommendation that's in there. Hopefully it was clear through the briefing document. We're recommending award of this on a line item basis, based off the bid tabulation that was sent out for them to bid off of. And we're recommending award of items 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 to Ferguson Waterworks. Award of item 8 and 9 to Armor Rock Polymer Concrete. Award of 6, 7, 10, and 11 to Geneva Pipe and Precast. The dollar amounts are on your briefing document for the motion if you so choose. And it did turn out, one of the major components on this bid was delivery, when we could anticipate to have them on the ground, because even if we get a $1,000 product for $500 and we can't get it for 5 years, it doesn't do us any good. So that was a major component that played into this. We can have all the materials on the ground here in the city the first week of May. So.
How long are these prices good for? Well within the time limit that we could order them, get them, and pay for them, so there'd be no chance of increase?
Yes, if council approves this tonight, the notice will go out to the winning bidders tomorrow.
And do they require half down, or we just pay once it's invoiced after we receive?
Payment is on delivery.
Okay.
So.
This is going to be a tricky motion if there's no further discussion.
I'll make the motion that we award bid items 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 to Ferguson Waterworks in the amount of $396,352.48, and award bid items 8 and 9 to Armor Rock Polymer Concrete in the amount of $96,840, and award bid items 6, 7, 10, and 11 to Geneva Pipe and Precast in the amount of $47,475.47.
I have a motion by Coates.
I will second that if I don't have to repeat all those.
I think you should, Councilman Ivy, just for, no.
Clarification.
I got it right? No, if not, it's in the report, so.
Yeah, staff makes it easy for us. A second by Ivy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next item is item 10B, which is consideration to award a bid for Buena Vista Boulevard, Green Springs Drive to Cactus Lane project. Assistant Public Works Director Andy Stevens. And it looks like we have someone representing Andy. Go ahead and state your name. And
Yep, Andy is out, and I am Paul Mogul, the city engineer representing for this. So this project is Buena Vista. It's the frontage road there north of I-15. It consists of extending the full build out of the road from Green Springs to Cactus Lane. Buena Vista kind of next down right there. It's kind of a little funny. So this will consist of building that out the full width to Green Springs. We had a public bid opening on Tuesday, January 18th. We had 3 bidders bid on it, with Whitaker being the low bid, $1.181 million. And we would recommend them as the contractor for this project.
So it looks like the engineer is going to do it for a cheaper price. So I only like to
these
make
times
it's crazy. I understand.
It's crazy.
I've had that said to me a few times that
Yeah, we certainly like the engineer's estimate. Question for you.
Yeah.
Time frame on the project.
That is a good question. We originally bid this out in November with time constraints, and we had one bidder bid on it. We are flexible with we rebid it, being flexible with the time, and we're flexible with the contractor on
Understood.
time. Yeah.
Are we thinking this year?
Yes, it'd be this year.
Okay, great. Further questions?
So this is a project consisting of reconstruction and widening from Buena Vista from Green Springs Drive to Cactus Lane. So it's a full widening.
Right, it's on Buena Vista. It's that frontage road on north of I-15. As you drive it, it's full build out with curb and gutter on both sides, and then it ends, and then it just kind of necks down to a 2-lane road and then widens at the signal. This would carry that curb and gutter all the way through to the intersection.
So just south of the Green Springs Golf Course right there.
Right.
Okay, council staff is recommending approval of this project to Whitaker Construction, approval of the bid in the amount of $1,181,395.30. Would anyone like to make a motion to that effect?
I'll make a motion that we approve the widening of Buena Vista Boulevard from Green Spring Drive to Cactus Lane for the amount of, to Whitaker Construction in the amount of $1,181,395.30.
I have a motion by Coates,
I'll second that motion.
a second by Henderson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
One thing, can I, Mayor, for a sec? Can we just get a map next time on these bids of where these projects?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, council, we're moving right along through this agenda. Item 11 is public hearings, but we've talked about waiting until 5 p.m. to do the public hearings. Wondering if the council would be okay to move to item 12 and 13 and then come back to item 11 closer to 5? Yeah. If everyone's okay with that, I'd be happy to move into reports from assigned committees. And would anyone like to go first, or should we just go from my right to left?
I'll go, Mayor. I'm excited to work with the new planning commissioners. That's very exciting to have some new people on board. And then I also have my first shade tree meeting a week from today, so I'm excited about that. So.
Well, that's great. The planning commission is an important job, as is the shade tree committee. You'll do great there.
Well, Mayor, on the committees I'm on, we haven't met since the first of the year at least, so we have nothing new to report, but I do have a meeting with the solid waste manager tomorrow as well, so try to work on some of those other issues we have along Telegraph on trash. We're really trying to work on it, but it's a tough thing we're dealing with, so, but that's all I have to report.
I was going to say, the dump's kicking it up a notch on making sure you're tarped and everything, because I've been there several times this last week, and they're kicking it up a notch. So
Well, that's good. And they also the prisoners were cleaning up the highway today that I saw.
Yeah,
So they're working on I-15 right around Washington Parkway today. So that's a good thing. They weren't working on our city roads, but at least they were working on the highway that comes to our city. So it's a start.
Well, I think as we just continue to focus on that, I think we'll make progress, and it's always going to be a challenge because, as you said before, Councilman, most people that go to the dump go through Washington City. So, Councilman Martinson, you just got your assignments today. Youth
Report
Council.
on all of it.
Why don't you talk about Youth Council?
Yeah, I don't know.
You're
I'll meet when they meet. I'll figure all those out and when all those meetings are, and we'll have a report next time.
No, you'll do great. I believe Councilman Ivy previously had that assignment, and did you give Carmen the heads up that?
I didn't tell her who the assignment was. I wanted to leave that to Councilman Martinson, but I'm going to tell you it's one of the best assignments in the city. And we're looking forward to a great trip to the legislature with them. So
fantastic. Any reports on this side?
Mayor, I do have some things. When we have daily updates from the legislative policy, and we also have legislative policy meeting every Monday. There's over 1,000 bills, and so trying to determine what ones I would want to talk about, it's kind of hard to talk about all of them in the time allotment that we have, but I'm just going to talk about the big issues right now. Of course, water issues. There's several bills that deals with water and conservation and that type of stuff, and then retail incentives, retirement. There's some bills that address housing in the state that talks about the missing middle of the housing, and that is something that is being worked on. There's other bills that we're keeping an eye on. I have compiled a list that I will share with the council as often as I can do that. But we have some bills that we've identified as a municipality or ones that we want to keep an eye on and make sure that that going forward that we have our say. We do have a lobbyist that works at the Capitol with us, and it's very important to know these bills and to know how they're going to affect our city. The last thing, Mayor, is I do have an update on Hillside Protection Committee. We met on site at Finley Farms, the Finley Farms townhomes, and then Desert Ridge Phase 2. And we had a good meeting, and just want to assure the council that this is good information. I look forward to bringing those reports back as those applications come forward so that we can have that firsthand information and create kind of continuity in the timeline.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember. Appreciate the update. Councilmember Casperson.
Today, I don't have anything to report. I have some meetings planned, but for now, I don't have any right now.
Great. I'll just share a couple of little updates. So with the MPO, with transportation, one of the goals that they're currently working on is a long-term transit services plan. They're looking to have some updates through 2030. So that's in the initial stages, and they'll be coordinating with the city on some of our long-term goals from that regard. On the HAC committee, the Community Land Trust has formed a subcommittee that's called the Southwest Utah Community Land Trust. So that's something that I'll be involved with on that, and that's some local efforts that I'll report back information, but that's also local efforts to be part of the solution on some of the missing middle, and of course the with Washington County Water Conservancy District, that ordinance is the landscape conservation ordinance is a continuing discussion, and staff will be bringing that to us at a future meeting. But what I'm happy to report back is that there has been a lot of really good coordination and cooperation throughout the municipalities within the county, within the district, and I think they're taking all points of view and they're taking it seriously. So more to come on that, but I wanted to just report back that we're making progress as we're still not quite 5 o'clock. City manager report.
I'll try to take 7 minutes then. We'll see what we can do. I just want to give you an update on some projects. I think it's of interest to the council and to the public who are here today. On water, we have the AMI metering project that you approved and funded a few months ago is moving along. We expect to start installing beginning next month in February. So that's an interesting project from a water conservation standpoint. It makes automated metering so that we can do hourly meter reads, find leaks faster, and basically take care of our water better, our culinary water.
Manager Red, that was going to take about, was it 6 to 8 months to get it all done?
It's going to take a while. That's why I only announced the start date. We just want to.
All right. Well,
How
you
long
let
do
us
you
know
think
when the
it'll take,
finish date's
Lester?
done too. So
Yeah, it's going to take a while to get them swapped out. But on streets projects, one of note, the I-15 Main Street interchange that's of note to a lot of residents is still in geotech and design, and we're getting closer on that. It's taken longer than we hoped, but we're sort of at UDOT's timetable on that. But we are a partner in that project, so we're at the table and helping to get the best design and outcome possible. So we're working hard on that.
are we going to get any look at it before
Absolutely.
it's done, or is it just here's what UDOT decided?
Absolutely. We'll let you look at it as soon as they have public information that they can share.
Okay.
We'll see what we can do there. The power company right now, the power department is on a rebuild of Cactus Way. So in staff meeting this week, they explained to me where Cactus Way was. I still don't know the name of every street in our community. So the map idea is a really good idea. But Carrie took me on a field trip to the golf course to collect the money and showed me where Cactus Way was. And there were our employees up in a bucket truck. They're rebuilding those lines on that street and installing new poles. That'll continue for another 2 to 3 weeks, and then they'll move on to another project. One other thing of note in the power department, we're working on a summer power purchase, and it's become a little difficult. I mean, the prices this summer are looking high. So we're going to be wanting to watch that, and we'll be asking people to conserve and be careful with their power usage, especially in the high load hours. Our peak hours are sort of that afternoon, early evening hour. So if people, as we get into summer months, we'll do some outreach to try to help minimize our load as much as we can during those times. But last year we were looking at power prices like $150 a megawatt. We thought we could secure some for around 200, and now it's looking higher. So we're kind of on hold, hoping it settles in a little bit. So there's some big purchases driving that up, but we'll keep working on that. I know that Rick and his staff are watching it very carefully to make sure we can secure the power we need for the summer. And then the last project I'd mention is the 3650 South, what we're calling the Wheels Park. I think everybody's kind of been on with that, understanding where that's going. Barry and his group, his architects that he worked with, are finishing up the planning process. So expect to see that come to the council likely in February for your review. And then beginning in February and March, we'll work with Zions Bank Public Finance to start the bonding process on that park. So that'll take about 90 days, but we expect to start construction, if all goes well, by the end of the year. And of course, with your approval and go ahead. Any questions on either of those?
Just excited about that Wheels Park.
It's an exciting park. It's, we have Sullivan Park, the bond for Sullivan Park coming off. And so we're looking at the next regional park, and those are exciting, and they really add to the community, but they're big endeavors and big projects. But Barry and his team, and I know Councilman Ivy's been really instrumental in that, helping to secure the property for that, and others have really helped a lot. So that'll be a park that I think will be an exciting thing for all of us to be involved in.
So Councilman Ivy and I have been talking about dusting off our skateboards, and when this is done, we're going to go there and do some skateboarding.
Only if I can get a pillow tied to my backside, then maybe we'd do that.
So I remember seeing video of people jumping in the boilers when that park was done. So I think we're going to hold you to that. We expect to see you on a bike or a skateboard or something, right?
Yeah, I say we do the skateboard. That sounds really entertaining.
I'm good for one run.
And drop it on the half pipe. That'd be great.
Maybe we could find people that are better than us to do a demonstration. How about that?
I'm sure we can.
All right. Thank you. That's all I have.
All right. So I'm showing about 5 minutes until 5 p.m. How about we take a 5-minute break and then come back at 5 o'clock, and we'll jump into the 2 items that are public hearings.
Need a motion.
We don't need a motion. You can just take a break.
Thank you. Hey, welcome back. It's been a few minutes. We'll get started again. We'll move on to item 11, which is public hearings. And there are two items that are on the agenda for public hearing. And while we do have the ability to take public comment electronically, no public comment was submitted electronically on either item 11A or 11B. So as we move on to, and as we work through both of these items, one's a resolution, one's an ordinance, so it will be a roll call vote, council. Again, like last time, I will open the public hearing and close the public hearing. Item 11A is a public hearing and consideration to approve a resolution for the Washington City Water Management and Conservation Plan. And before I turn the time to Assistant Public Works Director Lester Dalton to give a brief presentation, I'd like to just give a little bit of background to help people understand the scope of this document and of where we've come to so far. So on January 4th, which was technically, I guess, the second meeting of this council, we met as a group, and we, what we call a workshop session, and Assistant Public Works Director went through the Water Conservation and Management Plan. And of course, as all of our meetings are, except for certain few that are in closed session, that was an open and public meeting. And we had a good crowd there. And it was good to have them be able to be there and to listen to the presentation. At that time, the council was able to be introduced to this plan. They were able to answer questions and clarify on that. So it was a good meeting. The feedback that I got afterwards from those who were in attendance was very supportive and felt like that was a good process. So that meeting was not a public hearing. This meeting is. So tonight is an opportunity for you to hear a little bit of the same presentation that we heard the other night. And then I will open the public hearing for comments that are relevant to the scope of the document and what's on the agenda tonight. And I'm happy to hear from you. That's what we want to hear. And then after the public hearing is closed, we'll turn it back to the council to maybe answer any questions or have further discussion before the voting. So on to item 11A, which is the Water Management and Conservation Plan update. I just want to read a little bit from the introduction so you understand the context and scope of the conversation tonight. So the objective in the introduction of, I'm reading actually out of the document, it says, State of Utah House Bill 71, the Water Conservation Plan Act requires water providers, essentially Washington City, to develop a water conservation plan. Washington City first developed and submitted a water management and conservation plan in May of 1999. As directed by Utah Code 73-10-32, updates to these plans are required every 5 years. Updates were submitted in 2004, 2010, and 2015. This report fulfills the update obligation and is intended to supersede the 2015 report as a working document that both defines Washington City's approach to water conservation and serve as a management tool for measuring, tracking, and reporting the effectiveness of conservation measures. I'm skipping down a paragraph. Washington City has continued to grow rapidly. In order to enjoy and preserve these surroundings, Washington City is dedicated to the stewardship of not only the natural beauties of the land, but the water as well. The Washington City Water Conservation Plan consists of 7 sections. I'll read those and then I'll ask Lester to come forward. Section 1 is the goals of the conservation plan. Section 2 is a description of Washington City water system. Section 3 identifies present and future water needs. Section 4 describes water problems and conservation goals within Washington City. Section 5 describes the current and planned water conservation practices. Section 6 describes current water pricing structures. And Section 7 describes the process for plan implementation, monitoring, and evaluation. Lester.
Thank you again, Mayor and Council. As the Mayor stated previously, this is This is a requirement to us from the state. Every 5 years, we have to update this conservation plan. Since I've been here, it's occurred 3 times. What we're trying to do here is show consistency, show uniformity, and kind of carry on our initial efforts that were put in place. The main driving force behind this document is in 1999 when the legislature put this in place via House bill. The intent is that all municipalities, all water service providers, whether it be municipality, private companies, whatever it may be, understands that there is a conservation need within the different regional areas of the state. We happen to fall within that southwestern region, and they came to the determination that consumption back in 1999 was in the vicinity of 305 gallons per capita per day. So for every person within Washington City, their assumption was on an overall scale that every person was using 305 gallons of water per day. As part of the House bill, they required that we achieve a 22% reduction by 2065, which would bring our gallons per capita per day down to 237 per person within Washington City. To date, we are currently at a 16.7% reduction, which supersedes the bill requirement of a 14% reduction, but we still have the same goal of the 22% reduction by 2065. So ultimately what we're trying to do is look at this on a broad scale and look at where can we conserve water, what components could we put into place to conserve water and prevent waste. One of them components that we've got a stepped rate structure that's in place. It's been in place for several years. We've got a drought contingency plan that's been in place for several years as well. And one of our goals is that we continue these existing strategies that we've got in place, verify their effectiveness, partially by way of doing these updates and verifying that they are proving productive toward reaching them goals. And another component of that is to try and improve our public outreach as best we can, and keep the ad campaigns going. Keep it on everybody's mind. This year has proven to be an exceptional year for public perception of the drought that we've been in for several years, and anticipate we're going to continue in them in that same state. The reality is we're in southern Utah. We're in a desert. We don't receive the rain that other portions of the country do, and we do consume quite a bit of water. Another one of the goals is our AMI metering that's been approved. That's underway. It's going to take some time to get implemented. Once we can reach full implementation of it, I think we're going to see some trends start to build from the data that we're able to collect, and we're going to get some additional ideas to help us continue toward that 20% reduction. One of them components, once we get that up and running, we're gonna dive in and do a really heavy audit on that data that we're receiving, and try and get to the bottom of, okay, where's some more tools? Where's some more tools? What additional measures can we take in public education and outreach to get this word on the street? Here's some conservation goals that you can do at your own home that are going to be helpful. Recently, the mayor brought up the landscape ordinance that's being worked on by all the counties. We haven't contemplated that in this plan, but it is going to show up. It's going to show up in our next plan and our next update, that this was an additional measure that was implemented that shows conservation goals. Some additional goals can be generated from that as well. The other component, the other goal that we've got listed out in there is to assess moving toward a pressurized irrigation system, not only in the old part of town, but on the city as a whole. Any waters that we can use that are not quality enough for coming out of your taps for drinking water, we would like to make use of them waters in order to prolong our drinking waters. So kind of in a nutshell, that's what this plan is for, is these are our goals. This is the water that we have. We're showing the beneficial use of it, where it's going, and these are the goals. Part of that process is that, we don't have dramatic leaks that are within the system. In the previous decade, we've replaced all of the older parts of the system. That helped us. So all of these components that we're working together for is just to create this conservation mean, and kind of shed a light on where we do have water waste and where we can maybe decrease that waste and make better use of the water. So, has the council got any questions? I think Councilman Mortensen was the only one that wasn't at the previous workshop.
Yeah, I was not here. So if these have already been answered, just let me know if that's okay.
Go ahead, council member.
I've got just 3 questions. On page number 8, I was just looking at the population projections, and then table 3.2 was recorded city population. I just noted that 2020 shows the previous projection. Is that going to be updated, and then 2030, 2040, 2050, 2060 going to be updated with the city's projected population?
Okay, so part of the guidelines that were presented from the state, any of the population projections that are put out have to come from the census data and the governor's office. So them projections are, historically we've been able to notice that they seem to be low. So all of them projections are directly what's coming out of the governor's office of planning and budget. And as you can see, our reported population, which is based on our
Census.
our current meters that we have in the system, and our current census reported people per household. So, and historically we've seen this coming out of the governor's office of planning and budget, is that they're typically low from what the realities are.
And this number here, though, is if you're doing it based on the meter, it has nothing to do with how many people use these as secondary homes and those kind of items.
Correct.
So
Correct.
the population might say 33,000, but it might not be 33 full-time resident housing.
Correct. However, with the water system, keep in mind, we have to plan as if there was somebody living in them houses regardless, because we're obligated to provide that water service to them.
Okay. Yeah, just curious, because if it keeps going as is, we'll surpass the 2030 numbers here pretty quickly. So the next one was on page 9, 8.75% estimated system loss. What does that
It's actually so system losses in the water world include fire hydrant flushing for water quality purposes, for testing purposes, any of that component. It also includes, any theft of service that may have happened. So them system losses are the difference between water that we were paid for versus water that we produced. So that's a really easy calculation to establish. Another component that doesn't always show up in system losses is new development, line flushing, that kind of stuff. There are times when we have larger diameter pipelines that are being installed. You just can't meter that water. In the big scheme of things, it's very minimal on how much water is lost there. The other component here that typically gets forgotten about, and like I mentioned in the previous decade, we've kind of overcome, is leaks. Just leaks within the system. It doesn't sound like much, but everybody's seen the little exhibits that go out that a dripping faucet loses this many thousands of gallons of water per year. We have miles and miles, thousands of miles of pipe that are in the ground in Washington City. Really good way to have a pipe leak is to bury it. Mm-hmm. It will leak one day. And as time goes on, they leak more and more and more. And we're actually in really good shape with our system losses. On a national level, anything under 20% is considered exceptional. So.
Okay. And then the last question, just looking at page number 10, I know you mentioned a goal of 22% reduction as set by, was that state legislature?
Yes, that was House bill.
I just noticed that GPCD by 2030, we're already at that 22% reduction.
Correct. Well,
Do you have to abide by that 22% reduction, or can you continue?
you can continue as far as you want, is what it boils down to. But the state has mandated to us that we're by 2065, we have to reach 22% reduction from what their assumed number was in 99.
Okay.
So,
And that 254, is that 22%?
no, the 254 as of today, with the 254, we're at a 16.7%
Okay.
reduction.
And so based on this, it'll just maintain that 16% until 2065 when we have to be at the 22%.
No, what'll happen is we will do another update on this same plan, following the same process in 5 years, and see where we landed from there. For example, in 2015, we were at 281 gallons per capita per day. In 2020, we were at 254. So what we're doing is working, but we still need to continue it.
Okay.
I think we need to be as good as stewards to the water as we possibly can. It is a commodity.
So Lester, we do this because, one, the state requires, but also it's a good idea to understand our water sources, understand our system, and try to identify and implement best practices. Are there any significant changes from the last plan to this update? I mean, this would be number 5 if I'm counting right.
Yeah, the only significant change that I can even think of would have been the AMI metering, and that's technology based. It finally became real.
So maybe some minor.
Yeah, there's some minor stuff in there, but there's no significant changes. Okay. The recommendations that are in this plan are almost identical to the recommendations in the 2015 plan.
So the on page 13, the goal number 4, that's been a goal for how many?
That's been a goal since 1999 when we did the very first one.
Okay, that's a question I had from some residents.
So Lester, is this plan written specifically for Washington City, or is it a template that's used throughout the state?
This is specifically for Washington City, so everything in here is Washington City specific.
Okay, I want to talk for just a minute. I'm going to go back to page 10, 3.5, where it talks about secondary water use. And in this report, it talks about implementation of a citywide pressurized irrigation system will allow for utilization of water that is currently unaccounted for. The question that I have for you is, I actually have 2, but the first one is, in this consideration, have we ever talked about collecting runaway water that is not being used, but it's going down the ditch and basically down Mill Creek and into the Virgin River? Have we ever considered a plan to collect that runaway water to help offset the deficiencies?
That's a potential, and that's part of the unaccounted for water. In the water world, the way unaccounted for water is if you didn't meter it to the end user and know what that application was at the end use, and you had losses, it goes back to Councilman Mortensen's question, system losses. Mm-hmm. So all of the wastewater, in the flood irrigation scenario, or the water that didn't get used, if a shareholder didn't take their water, any of that, and it's going on down the country, we can't really account for that water. Where did it go? We don't know if because that person didn't use their share, somebody else picked it up downstream and was able to use it because we haven't metered it. We don't know if it ultimately ended up in the Virgin River. We don't know where it went. We can't account for its end use.
So the water, considering the water deficiencies, it's talking about a pressurized secondary irrigation system. Has the city made any formal direction towards doing anything with a pressurized water system in older part of Washington City?
We have not. We've had some preliminary discussions looking at some concept level. Hey, this is an idea that might work. We have not gone down the road
And,
of
and to my knowledge, there's been no money given or direction from the council to do this. It's my consideration that before we look at doing that very costly piping of the irrigation water within the confines of the old part of Washington, that we look at the runaway water. So sometimes water seepage in a system is not totally a bad thing. That's actually what recharges the groundwater system. It's incredible that people say, you know, when you build a reservoir, it's intended to leak. You know, part of that water is part of that groundwater recharge. And in this case, in the Navajo Aquifer, that's part of the system that we have. So a little bit of loss, I don't consider to be a bad thing, but what I consider to be a major concern is the runaway water, which you could probably monitor at the south end of Washington, where that water is no longer being used for irrigation. It's basically going down the ditch. But it was my, that actually answers both of my questions. Thank you.
Okay. Further questions?
Yes, Lester, if you could, on section 4.2, number 4, there's a couple sentences there I would, you know, maybe like some more clarification on. You know, this is regarding the downtown irrigation system. On number 4 there, it says, you know, these are some of the goals as set forth. It says, assess the desirability, costs, and effectiveness of replacing the old secondary system with a new pressurized irrigation system. So what does that process look like, and who's involved, and who, you know, we have a lot of the stakeholders here, you know, that are at this meeting from downtown. What does that process look like if we, you know, get to that point when we're gonna study that?
And from a staff perspective, and I believe the council would want to see this as well, is to have that completely open. I mean, have a full public process with it. You know, the ideas that have been presented in previous irrigation master plans that have been done, some of the ideas that are coming to light now, you know, that's part of that. Is that we assess this, we bring that to the council, we have a public process that looks at the desirability, not only from a council perspective, but also from the public's perspective. You know, the cost, there's going to be a cost associated with it, and it's pretty significant. And is it going to be effective? Can you justify the expense associated with that cost? And ultimately, if it's not desired as a whole, then why would we do it? You know, from my perspective as one of the water managers in the area, is I want to conserve everything that we possibly can so that we still have water to provide in the future. So that's where I'm coming from. The public may have a little bit different idea on that. The council may have a little bit different idea on that. But that's what this public process is for, is bring everything out in the open. Let's have discussions on it. Let's vet all of the ideas that may be potentially floating around out there. I'm not going to have the best idea, I promise you that. But I would like to think that I do have some ideas, and maybe they hold some credence, maybe they don't. But I think as a whole, we need to move ahead as a community and realize that our water, every drop of it, if it's wet, it's precious to us.
So Mayor, I have a question. So this has been in the plan for how many years?
Since 1999.
Since 1999. So there's really, we continue to update the plan every 5 years. And I think it's wonderful that everybody comes and we get to talk about the things that we can do to conserve water. But we haven't moved down a road where this has become any more likely today than it was 5 years ago necessarily.
No.
But we are, and would it be fair to say that if we decided to go down the road of secondary system, there is some lower hanging fruit, which is all of the secondary piping that we have installed in Washington Fields that doesn't have secondary system yet. Is that correct to say?
Yes, it is.
So, I mean, as we assess the desirability and the costs and the effectiveness and how much water we would save, those plans might take priority over something expensive that might not have as much water savings.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and the reality is as well, where the pressurized system is already in place in a bunch of the area and not being utilized, that becomes the easier component, and that becomes the less expensive component because we don't have to go install the system. The system's the expense associated with it. If that expense has already been done and all we got to do is figure out how to get the water to it, that's going to be financially, it's going to be a lot less expensive on that component.
And Mr. Dalton, the area where that secondary water main is already installed, or the services for that, is that below the river? Was it fair to say below the river?
No, we've got significant portions up in the Green Springs area. Brio is entirely piped. The upper end of Warm Springs at Perry Landing, I believe it's called, that one's all piped. All of Brio, the entire upper portion of Green Springs, all the development that's occurred up there since 2006, I believe it was, when we required that installation.
So it might be easier to say that the older part of Washington's the only area that really doesn't have a secondary system in the ground right now, or
we've even got a little bit. We've even got a little bit here in the old part of town when we reconstructed Main Street. As part of that reconstruction, we put that pressurized pipe in, and we held true to the existing flood irrigation system and got it up and operable as well, even with the widening project. But we didn't just put on the blinders. We know that that's something that really should occur somewhere along the way.
Can I ask one more thing? So back to paragraph 4 there, the last sentence, I was just have a little bit of concern with it. And like I said, I've read through this entire plan, and I like the direction it's going, but I just have some concerns here. And this is this paragraph is, referring to the downtown system, basically. And I haven't talked to anybody about this, but I'm assuming if I have some concerns, maybe other people do too. So the last sentence says the secondary irrigation system is a very high priority for the city, and once the master plan has been adopted, implementation of the system will begin. And sometimes when I read something like that, I'm, imagining, somebody downtown waking up and all of a sudden there's a city backhoe digging up their ditch, without any, prior, notice or anything. And so I like the conversation that we've been having, that this is going to be a slow process with a lot of input, and most likely downtown's not going to happen right away. Just speak to that. I'm sure people are nervous about that sentence.
Okay, so kind of conceptually, this irrigation master planning process is a long, drawn-out process. We've got to get all the ideas in place first. Then we've got to say, okay, here's the ideas. What would be the concept of implementation of these ideas? What's it going to cost? Naturally, we're not going to immediately one day say, okay, we adopted this plan and now we're just going to go gung-ho and we're going to do it all, because we won't have the funding in place. The concept behind a master plan is to establish the funding mechanism. And part of that funding mechanism is the timing associated with it. Well, part of that timing needs to be, and that'll be something that staff and council are working very closely together. What is a phasing plan? What's the top priority? And what's the long-term priorities? Phase 1 very likely isn't going to be the very most expensive phase associated with it. You've got to be able to budget in how long it's going to take you to do it, how many funds are you going to receive in order to do it. Even if you go out and bond, it's just huge. So that phasing concept and timing components associated with it are going to be a huge portion of that master plan. And if we are getting into something that's that may potentially be affecting the existing irrigation system, how do we keep that whole in the meantime? How do we keep things moving forward without anybody being dramatically affected, without having a replacement for that effect, whatever it may be? And that'll be part of the discussions that we have with the irrigation master plan as it comes through.
Thank you, Mr. Dalton.
Okay, thank you.
So before we open the public hearing, just kind of by raise of hand, how many think they would like to speak to this tonight? Okay, so we have a few. So just as a reminder, state your name. To the extent possible, if you could keep your comments to within the scope of the document and this discussion. Most things I think can be said within about 3 to 5 minutes, but we'll use our best judgment on that. And I'll look to the council to primarily listen while the public hearing is open and make notes, and we'll to the extent possible, we'll try to answer any questions that are brought up after the public hearing is closed. So at this time, I'll open the public hearing and invite any who would like to speak to come forward.
John Olson, downtown resident, born and raised here. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Thank you, City Manager, for the opportunity. This city is very unique. When this city has a problem, the government doesn't need to solve the problem. The residents will pitch in and solve this problem, or help solve the problem. We're all about conserving water here. I get it. Culinary water is a right. Secondary water is a privilege. If you look at the water rights that the city has, our springs, many of them have 2 water rights that were filed on them in the 1860s. One of them is a low flow for domestic and municipal use. That was for watering livestock and for our drinking water. These springs are pure water. They have no salt in them. It's emergency water. If you gave me the option today to disconnect from the culinary system and hook up to the Adair Spring, I'd do it in a heartbeat. Also, our water rights that the city owns on our springs are very specific on what the water can be used for, what blocks in the city can be watered, even down to lots. It's hard to take the city serious about conserving water when for over a year on the corner of 100 North and 200 East, when the building project went in, they hit water. It's going down the drain. More water down the drain than comes out of the Adair. When they redid the Staley substation, they hit water. It's going down the drain. Of the 2,500 acre feet yearly that the secondary system provides, just under 9,000 or 900 acre feet are watering 2 golf courses. You asked us this summer to not water during specific times of the year or the day to conserve water. But on multiple occasions during those hours, at this park, sprinklers were going. They have a water share. It was the best time of the summer when they flood irrigated that park. So if you're gonna ask the citizens to conserve and not use culinary water for secondary purposes, the city shouldn't either.
Thank you, Mr. Olson.
How you doing? My name is Dennis Iverson, and I used to have a seat on this council. When this requirement was put into effect by the legislature in 1999, I happened to be in the legislature. And the intent of it was to make sure that the waters of Utah were put to the best use possible. And I think we're doing a pretty good job. But we do have a situation here in our county, or at least in the Dixie area, that's a little different than most of Utah. And that is when we don't use the water and it goes down the river, it's gone. Up in the basin, it doesn't leave Utah. It still can be used by Utahns. But here we can lose it. Now, I don't know how many of you guys have seen St. George's secondary water use program that they're using right now. They have a map available that will show you exactly where their secondary water is going. And they're using a lot of the St. George Washington Field Canal Company. And Washington City is not using a drop of it, I don't believe. And the main part of the system is right here in Washington City. And whenever a development has gone up out in the Washington fields, the city has required a secondary system be put in. But there's no water at this time that can be put in it for the most part, because it's never connected to the St. George Washington Field Canal Company system. One reason it's not working very good is because that system is not pressurized. But the intent is when the Warner Valley Reservoir is built, it will be a pressurized system. So it's something the city needs to look forward to getting involved in between that time so it can be used. And I think the city's done a good job in requiring that the developers put these secondary systems in. But you've done a dang poor job in getting water rights to use the water. You've never required a developer to bring any water into the city. They develop the property, and the city then has to furnish water that's been developed from other sources. So I would suggest that you spend a good deal of time looking at what St. George has done and what you can do to acquire some of that St. George Washington Canal Company water and make sure it's put to beneficial use. The reason I am so concerned about it is if it's not put to beneficial use, we cannot hold it in the St. George Washington Canal Company because it's a private entity. And a private entity cannot hold water rights unless they're put to beneficial use. The city can. A public entity can hold water rights until they need it in the future. So I'd look into that, you guys, and see what you can do to get something going with that situation. I think that's all I had to say, but I'm not sure. It's good to talk to you guys. Good to see you.
Thank you, Mr. Iverson. Any other thoughts, comments?
Hi, I'm David Blair. I live in the Stookie Farms area, and they have the irrigation system installed, but not currently being utilized. I've kind of heard third hand that Stookie Farm has several wells that aren't being utilized currently. I believe they're in the development, they're going to have like 4 different ponds. And originally I heard, well, the wells, you can't use them directly because the water's brackish. But then I heard if you fill these ponds with well water, apparently over some period of time you can use the pond water for irrigation directly without going through some other kind of processing. Is that true, or is this just hearsay?
So after we close the public hearing, I'll ask Lester to answer that question, and I know he knows the answer. I think most of us have a good answer, but his will be the best answer.
And I guess the other thing is if that's true, once the ponds are in place, how long is it going to take before we can actually utilize that secondary water?
Thank you, Mr. Blair.
I'm Leo Tobler, and I probably hobby garden as big as anybody in town. And I was really pleased to hear you say that we don't want you to wake up one morning and the backhoes are out there, sorry, you're out of water. And so, our old certificates say owners. The new ones say users. So I just, appreciate you not jumping into something without getting the public input so we know exactly. Because I heard this the last meeting. I didn't even know anything about it. And they said, do you know your irrigation water is going to be gone? It's going to be gone right away. Well, I just appreciated today hearing that you're not going to do anything without getting some public input. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tobler.
I'm Philip Hartley, related to Tobler. My concern is the Tanner Ditch. My understanding is St. George City owns some of that Mill Creek water that comes down by the Mill Creek. And they control the amount that comes down the Tanner Ditch. And they wash it out, they wash the sand trap out, and they wash it down the ditch, and it comes on my property. But part of that Mill Creek water goes into the Sandberg Pond that was sold to St. George City. So I don't know how down the road this will affect the Tanner Ditch. The city tried using the Tanner Ditch water to water the Nyson Park, and they burned out 2 or 3 pumps, if I'm right, because there was too much sand in it, and they couldn't do it. So they're using, I'm assuming, culinary water. But that's my concern, and I appreciate the opportunity to voice it here in public, and I appreciate your listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hartley. Any further comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And let me just say, I know a lot of you here, and I've known you for years, and I'm really just humbled to hear your comments, and we learn so much from you. And I agree with you, Mr. Olson, that water challenges, which have been here as long as we've been here, ought to be resolved as a community. And so I'm happy to know that we're all in this together when it comes to water, and I think we can work together. I think this is a model of how a public hearing ought to go. We received so much good feedback, and I really appreciate the insightful questions from the council and their preparation. Lester, there were some questions, and I did take notes from some of the comments and really appreciate that feedback, but I want to make sure that we answer those questions. David Blair asked about the Stuckey Farm water and how long the mixing there in the ponds. Can you address that?
There's been a lot of discussion that has occurred with Carl Larson on the wells and the water rights that he's got available out there. All of the testing that we've done on the water, it is brackish. He's doing something that we can't really find any science behind. They call it water changers. There's not any real science. All the testing that we perform still shows that it's brackish. However, something is real there because he's been using that water exclusively on their HOA park out there. As well as the sod farm. The sod farm's a little different animal just from the perspective of salts typically build up in a plant. So over time, they cause a problem. If the sod farm was only watering it for a year and then it's getting shipped off and then it's receiving culinary water somewhere else, it doesn't get that opportunity. His park is a little different situation. It's been receiving nothing but that water since it was installed. We are seeing some effects. I don't know if that's lack of water or water quality issues that are showing up out there. But we have had some discussions with Carl on potential long-term leases for the water. We've got a standing offer out there to him today to purchase water from him and what Stuckey Farms owns in the Washington St. George Canal Company water. That standing offer's been in place and in his court for several months now. Part of the problem that we've got from a staff level is I've got to have a little bit of science behind being able to propose something that works, or that can potentially work, some data, something. And I haven't been able to get any of that from Carl. As for having the water stand in the ponds, the only concept I can come up with is the potential he's using that same ionization or whatever it may be with his water changers in that standing environment. I know that he's got one on the one well that they use out there. He's installed one in the ground within the well itself, and then he's got another one on the discharge of the well. Just can't get any backup data to show that it's successful, other than the fact he does have a park that doesn't look horrible that's been using that water exclusively.
But that's a private well, private system, and
Exactly.
we're looking at it, but that's for that private development itself.
Correct.
So, is that all you had on them?
Yes.
So one of the things that was brought up by Mr. Iverson was the canal water, and currently we do not own any shares in the canal water, correct?
Correct. We are actively in pursuit of shares. Okay. But water's kind of an interesting scenario. It depends on whether you're buying or selling what a share may be worth. We've got some standing offers out there for what we have heard the market value of them shares are. I know there's been some acquisitions that have been made for potential profit in the future, that kind of stuff. People buying up shares thinking that they're going to be worth a lot of money. Who knows where they're going to land, but we do have some reasonable offers that have been placed for water shares.
One other question that was brought up in the public hearing was by Philip Hartley. He asked about the Tanner ditch and the water that goes into the Sandberg Pond. Again, I think you were the best one to answer that one from this group.
Okay, the way that the water on the Tanner ditch works, it goes back to the Virgin River Decree, and who has priority right. Washington City has the priority right for the Tanner ditch water. And I can't remember what the allowable diversion is, but we are the priority right. Our diversion comes first. St. George has rights on it, as well as I believe the Kirklands have got a few rights on it as well, for whatever comes second. So the secondary priority goes to Sandberg Pond and downstream, but we are the primary right.
And then probably the last question that I had written down was from Mr. Olson. Can you address the daytime watering and whether that was culinary or secondary water?
If it was being done with sprinklers, it would have been culinary on the Veterans Park here. Chances are they were probably taking care of a few dry spots.
Okay. All right, Council, I'll turn to you to ask Lester any questions you have and to discuss it amongst yourselves before calling for a vote.
Mayor, just going back to Mr. Blair's comments, I wonder if it might be beneficial just to speak briefly about blending the water, what that looks like, and maybe that would help address part of his question as well.
Yes, what we've been looking pretty significantly at, especially with the St. George Washington Canal water, is a 50-50 blend appears to be the magic number. So if we have a 50-50 blend of a good quality, extremely low TDS water mixed with that higher TDS water, in essence, you're doubling your good quality water. And you're using water that's not of a culinary quality to accommodate that and accomplish that. That's kind of the road that we're going down right now, as to try and come up with source. The semi-brackish water coming out of the St. George Washington Canal, as well as the groundwater that's available out in the fields, needs to be mixed. We've got to have some good quality water to mix it with. The Warner Valley Reservoir it would be huge for us to have that in place and be able to take high flow water from the river when the TDS is way down, even though it's got a high sediment load. The actual amount of dissolved solids, which is the huge problem, if we could put that into a reservoir when the total dissolved solids is really down, and allow the sediment laden waters to settle out into a reservoir, everything that's left would be good quality water to use. That mixing would have occurred by Mother Nature in runoff events, that kind of stuff. We've just got to get it captured and get it stored we don't have a facility sizable enough to accommodate that.
So you mentioned that Mr. Larson's water shouldn't be performing as well as it is. It shouldn't be growing grass and all that. Have we ever had the county agent or a state agent out to lend their expertise on that as to why? Because they can do analysis and chemical compound breakdowns and all that stuff.
That's something that we're considering as part of the negotiations that we've been having with Carl, because I mean, we've been having a lot of negotiations, but they seem to just kind of fizzle and go away again. You know, we've been talking about leasing the water, figuring out a way to mix it, all kinds of stuff, and it never really comes to be. But it's still an open discussion. We're still open to conversation with him.
Mayor, I have a comment. I appreciate you've been able to stand up here and take rapid fire comments from all over the place, and I appreciate the comments that we've had. I think I would just out there to everybody, those who are here tonight and those who aren't, we've had a lot of discussion with people about water, and I know I'll just speak for Lester. He's available if you want to send him an email or go visit him at the Public Works office. We're happy to have discussion with residents anytime they have questions about water or really anything else. So you don't have to wait for a public hearing. We appreciate you coming. It's a good way to bump our numbers up, but Lester's available if you have questions going forward. So,
Mr. Red, would you share with the citizens where they could find the water management conservation plan? I know it's on the website, but I'm not exactly sure where.
I'm not exactly sure where on the website, but it's under water, under utilities and water on our website, I assume. So
yeah, if you go to services and then Public Works and then the water department, it's right there.
See, he can just stand up here and answer these questions with no prep.
That's the old one. This one's not here yet. I think Tara's got this one posted somewhere else just for the public to have access to it for this reason.
Great. Thank you, Lester. This time I'll turn to the council for further discussion and or a motion on the 2021 Water Management and Conservation Plan update.
Mayor, seeing no one else is going to make a motion, I will. I think we've answered a lot of questions tonight, and I hope that the residents are here and listening at home have their questions answered, that there's some level of ease in what we've talked about. I know it's the council's ultimate goal and standard that the conversation will first come to the citizens, and we will bring it forward from there. And there's a lot to do. We understand that we live in a desert, but we also understand that there's other things to consider. So with that, Mayor, I'm going to make a motion that we approve a resolution for the Washington City Water Management and Conservation Plan.
I have a motion by Ivy.
I second that motion.
A second by Henderson. It's a resolution, so we'll do a roll call vote. Let's go Martinson.
Aye.
Casperson.
Aye.
Henderson.
Aye.
Coates.
Aye.
Ivy.
Aye.
The update, the resolution passes unanimously. We'll move on to item 11B. Again, there was no public comment submitted electronically on this item. This is a public hearing and consideration to approve an ordinance for zone change request Z-21-27 for a planned unit development design use located at approximately 14 North, 300 East. And is that you, Drew, that's handling that tonight? So this is our Public Works, our Community Development Director, Drew Ellerman.
Thank you, Mayor. As stated, the applicant's request and approval of the design and use for this currently zoned PUDC property. The property is 0.38 acres in size. Again, this is at that northeast corner of Telegraph and 300 East. The name of this particular project is Flavors Coffee and Smoothies. The property was granted the planned unit development commercial zoning at an earlier date, with the applicant knowing that they would have to come back to the city for specific design and use approval. The applicant is wishing to do so at this time. The PUDC requires an approved site plan for the property can be used as a commercial development. The applicant is proposing to build 2 small drive-through buildings, both of which would have small outdoor seating areas. And let me move to that while we kind of go through there. I guess you can see them in that one exterior rendered right there in the top right-hand corner. These would be for customers to be outside if they preferred. Staff has minor concerns with the proposed use and location of the project, mostly due to the drive-through heavy design of the project as it's located at such a busy intersection. The applicant has designed the drive-throughs to account for a large number of vehicles, roughly 25 to 26, which helps the concerns. Access into and out of the development will be very limited due to the small footprint of the parcel itself. The access off of Telegraph will be limited to a single car ride-in only approach. The entrance exit off of and onto 300 East is also a challenge, but again, at least has right in and right out, where again, the one on Telegraph will just be right-hand in only. It's been pushed as far north to the property as it can be. There are 7 parking stalls provided within the project, which most of them will probably be used by employees, but could be a few business clients as well. Staff is hoping that the drive aisle running parallel to Telegraph. Let me bring that up on your screen. Hopefully I'll find the one that has the vehicles shown on it. And we'll go back to the first picture. It shows it. You can see in the ghost image the vehicles right here. Staff's asking that it actually be put as far south as possible. So, because if I'm in stall number 3 and I try to back out and there's a drive-through there, I'll be ordering a lot of smoothies. So just want it pushed as far south and to add a little more room, even add some more footage. And again, the applicant knows this through the public hearing within the Planning Commission, just to open that up as much as possible. So that's what staff is hoping for, is a little more room on that particular area. The Planning Commission reviewed the request at their January 5th, 2022 meeting. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of Z-21-27 for the specific site design and use of this already zoned plan unit development commercial zone property. And this was on to you, the City Council. It's based on the findings and subject to the conditions. I will like to add one more before I add some questions. In the last few days, I've been, again, pondering over this project. And as it came to me today, it would actually be wise if we could actually take these parking stalls and put them at an angle. So that'll help in the backup area, so they're not having to turn so much. All of us know if you're backing straight out on a 90-degree turn, you always worry about the front end of your vehicle hitting the one, but in an angle that's easier to back out and then exit out to that northwest corner of the development. So that's what I'd recommend, that we put those on at least a 30-degree slope if the council likes to.
There's a problem with that though, because then they have to drive through the drive lane no matter what, because there's no right turn. So if you put it on an angle, you'd have to, I think it's better to keep it straight so that they can back out and head out left, because the only outlet is on 300 East.
Right, I'm saying, so the angles would go from left to right, down.
But how do you make that turn when unless you're coming in from the east? It's hard to make that turn.
It is, but if I turn them the other angle, you're going to have to go through the drive-through to get out.
That's my concern. But if you do it the other way, it's more than a 90-degree turn. It's extremely hard to turn that.
If you come in from that, I'm just trying to eliminate as many possible scenarios. Let me just kind of draw. You guys love it when I draw.
Yes, we do.
So I would say that they would come like so. So when you back up, see if this is going to go, then you would head out. Sorry.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, Drew. I think the thing I'm saying is that it's hard to park. It's hard to turn.
If you come in, that was the one drawback to it. Coming in, you would, if you're, especially here, it is going to be very difficult to do that. But I think, it's going to be difficult coming in from this direction anyway. So I think most customers, once they've been here, they probably won't make the mistake again. They'll always enter off a Telegraph.
But it seems like I remembered this is drive-through only, right? Or is this for sit-down patrons as well?
Well, that's why you had the patios out here. You could, unless they could walk up and use the patios, there's no doubt. But again, I think most of these will probably be taken up by employees. There won't be that many of them. There'll only be 2 or 3 available for clientele to to sit, which is 3 or 4 better than most of the swigs. If you've been to those, there's no seating area or parking areas out around some of those. So
Drew, it seemed like in the planning commission, they had talked about maybe reducing some of the mandatory landscaping requirements there on Telegraph so that they can make their parking lot a little bigger. Is that
could
true?
be considered if that's the only alternative to allow more room out here. We don't want to go too small out there. But that could be a possibility, on that as well. It's a minimum 10 feet. Now I can tell you that some of that area out there is, if these property lines are correct, the city owns some of that. Let me see if I can find a better exhibit of where those are.
Does this map reflect the 10 feet or where are they at on
I'm going to
that?
go right to to this particular plan. Now this is taking it all the way out to the back of the sidewalk and some of that, but I don't know if that's the property line right there in that faint. If this is the property line where I'm kind of, you can't see it on the TV. I can barely see it on my screen. So that means that here, let me get my pencil again. There is a line showing up, and we'll maybe have the applicant or their engineer. I don't know if that's the property line. So I have this area here that's part of the right of way, but we could help use part of that 10-foot minimum of landscaping. Don't show it. Not sure what this distance is. It has 1 inch scale, but when you zoom in and out, you can't always trust what that may be. Is it by my red line, or is that? This pillar where my pencil is now? Okay, so that's even saying it's there. So not sure what this distance is. But again, in the past, the city's been generous to say, we'll let this, as long as we have a 10-foot landscape strip. We may own 6 of it, and you own 4, but you're putting the landscaping in, you're maintaining it. We have our 10-foot, we meet the intent of the code, and I don't mind doing that. We've done it in the past, and I'd probably strongly suggest here, because if we only have to go a few more feet, then we could pick up 6 or 7 maybe here. Again, I'm not sure what the dimensions are without having them on here. I do know this is like 25 feet, because I do have a measurement on another plan that's roughly 24.9. So that looks to me like I've got maybe 20 feet here. So we could pick up 7 or 8 feet probably there if the city's okay with letting them use part of our right of way out there that we're not going to come back
Drew,
and
I think
take.
that also would fall in line with maybe the new design standards from the Conservancy District, where we're trying to,
keep landscaping more minimal, not everywhere.
And definitely no grass. It's unusable grass, and so.
So I have a comment from somebody who spends time at Swig and Dutch Bros and sits in these lines quite a bit. I think really what you end up seeing is that the parking is very sparsely used. Like you said, maybe a few employees. With COVID, people have just become used to the drive-ups, and getting people in and out quickly will be important here so they don't stack up. But what you'll probably have on the walk-up and the few tables might be people from the neighborhood who don't want to get in their car and go through the drive-up, but might just walk in. But other than that, very few walk-up customers really in a scenario like this.
Drew,
is that you that's addicted to smoothies then? Or?
Yeah, I know some people.
I plead the fifth, but I spend a lot of time in those drive-up lines.
I know this was a court.
So Drew, do we need handicap? How many handicap and spaces would we need, considering that would just be for employees? Is that the number?
Yeah, anytime you put, if you're required for 1 parking stall, then it's a handicap. So if you have to put 1 in, you have to have 1 always devoted. So that means that if it's a 1 parking stall business, the handicap gets it, everybody else has to find their own.
But this project needs 7 parking spots.
No, it probably doesn't need 7. They're just, putting in 7, which I wouldn't want to reduce that. If there's a number to put 7 in, I know the buildings, by code would not require 7, but I'd just soon keep 7 in there. Again, 4 employees and the few people that may want to come in. And one of them does be required to be handicapped.
So is the idea with the 2 buildings to just get people in and out of there as quickly as
Yeah, it
possible?
expands the drive-through area is what it does. And that, yeah, you know, for the new council members that are here, there was a project that was brought before the city council a year ago, by a previous owner that got, you know, we gave them the PUD zoning, but the plan that they brought, because there wasn't enough stacking. So they knew that was going to be a challenge when they picked the property up. After talking to me, told them they really have to. So that's when they broke the buildings into 2 and basically had a lot more drive-through area, which I have to give them credit, you know, on creativity on this.
That's good.
So, and the buildings look nice. You know, you saw those on that one page, you know, on the colored page there. So they're taking a challenged, hard piece and making the most of it, especially with that kind of use, and especially the way we feel about drink shops, because every city in here that's had one of them come in realizes what it does. So you need anywhere from 20, 25, 27 available, you know, what we call just stacking area, and they've done well at that. So on this challenge, so
I appreciate you saying that, Drew. And looking at this layout, I still have some concerns. One of my concerns is that there's no right turn lane off 300 East, and it's only a single lane that heads up the road. I think we need a right turn lane, even if it's 2 cars. I think I addressed that in that last meeting as well.
was this, you mean, up here on the north end?
I'm saying along 300 East, there's only a single lane to go up 300 East. So if people are slowing down, we already have we have a light there, and we only have 1 lane heading north. So if you're coming up and if someone's trying to slow down and turn right, it causes us problem. We need a right turn lane there to turn into to the development there. It truly is a tight, small piece, and I appreciate the design and the look, but I think there's some concerns here that we need to address on that aspect. I'm also concerned about the right turn, the right only onto Telegraph. At some point, I wonder if that should only be an emergency access, and not allow people to turn in right there off Telegraph, because it doesn't have as much stacking as going through the site.
Drew, what is access management on that?
Well, unfortunately, if you go strictly to what the code is, you wouldn't be able to get in and out of this lot. You know, according to our standards right now, this lot. But we've been through an ombudsman, not on this piece, but previous, so we know kind of what we have to do, and so we're trying to make the most with what we can. But because of the distance to that intersection, this property couldn't get in or out of it. But we know we can't do that, so we're going to have to give in our access management somehow the best way, and to try to get as many people in and out as easy. I think that's why the one off of Telegraph is there, just to at least allow some to come in here and not have everybody go around the corner, then come back in and circle around. I get what you're saying, Councilman, because if you have somebody, you know, already packed back up in there, I'm going to point out McDonald's right now. If you go to McDonald's in front of Home Depot, people, hope you're not one of these, so I don't be offended. But when you're going through the drive-through, people go through that lane that's supposed to move traffic through the parking lot within the Home Depot, and you shouldn't be backed up in there. You know, you should just go circle around and wait till you can get in McDonald's. But people tend to do that, and that's why I know what your point is that you're afraid that could happen here on a city street, let alone a movement through a parking lot. So
well, the thing I'm concerned about is Telegraph is our main corridor, and all of a sudden we're going to introduce it's a good and bad thing where we're like, hey, this business is successful, right? But that business could affect our streets, and what I don't want our police and fire having to sit out there and ticket people because they're parked in the road to get their sodas. I'm concerned about that. I think last time we said, hey, it should be professional office space is what we were open to. So I'm concerned that there's no right turn lane on 300 East, the turn lane, the right in, potentially if we don't have a median down Telegraph, then people could turn left, and there's nowhere to turn left there.
So you want a inverted thing like what I just put on here is what you're saying, a turn lane in off of.
I'm saying that on 300 East, and then on Telegraph Street, potentially people could be turning right or coming straight, running east-west, And if they're coming from the west to the east, they could potentially try to turn left across our 3 lanes of traffic to get in, because we don't have any control there with medians.
Let me pull that. Ooh, whoa, don't drag, Drew. Okay. Come on. I see what you said. So you're thinking somebody might, now I got to go back to my pencil. Well, you're getting everything out of me. I see what you're saying. If I'm right here, somebody thinks, well, I want to go into the drink shop, so I'm going to stop right here, go across this lane.
I'm just thinking what Manager Red will do, because I know he lives south, and so he'll think, oh, I'll just do that.
So to stop that, you would have to put a raised median.
Yeah. Now, of course, if people get familiar with it, they'll like, oh, the easiest way is to go 300 and turn right.
Right.
So that, I mean, people will get familiar with it. These are my concern if you're concerns on those. So I'm just concerned about the access, and we're introducing a lot of vehicle stacking at a site that might potentially not be able to handle it. And we're doing it at one of our busiest intersections.
Do we have any signage plan to keep people from stacking out on the street at all? I mean, if McDonald's or some of these had some signage that disallowed it, is there any thought to keep people? I mean, it seems obvious, but it may not be obvious.
Wasn't that one of the conditions from Planning Commission was on 300 East was no
Yeah,
parking
in the
signs?
Planning Commission, you saw a condition on the end that asked for no parking along 300 all the way past the townhome project.
Yeah.
So the people could come out and not have to worry about cars being, in the way and not seen, and then they could just head up the street. Planning Commission, they agreed with that. There was one of the citizens that live in the townhome project right here, and just asked, because it'd be nice if they would just put no parking along there.
It was condition number 12, and then 13 was extra space in the drive lane along Telegraph.
That's the one I talked about earlier down here on the south part that we.
Perfect.
Drew, you said in the other meeting, the Planning Commission, that it was is this road gonna be 4 lanes, or did you mention something like that on 300 East?
Yeah, 300 East. Lesser, how are you guys gonna stripe that? Do you know anything on that on 300? Is it a 4-lane, 2 going each, or, oh, Mr. Engineer, Paul, come on. You're not getting off that easy. Get up here.
Let's leave it at Lester.
I know.
300 East would be a 3-lane unless you.
It's going to stay like this then, is what you're saying.
Unless you
Here.
purchase right away, yes.
Okay. Now let me just bring up your.
So Paul, would you say that, don't we have a right turn in requirement per our access management?
Well,
on this type of road, we do.
right, per access like
And
Drew mentioned earlier, per access management, this doesn't work. So there would have to be some exceptions in order to make this work. And yeah, you.
So let me ask you this: should there be a right turn lane off Telegraph?
It depends it depends what goes in there. With this drink, that's probably a valid point. With a drink shop going in there, that'd probably be a valid point. If you got the right of way.
Is there enough room there to, make that right-hand turn lane to cut that into the lot? I mean,
You would have to evaluate that. If those lines are correct, if there might be the right way to do that.
because there's some space there, not enough for a parking, that, maybe they wouldn't have to go a full, 15 feet or whatever they are normally. Maybe they only encroach onto the site plan 8 feet, and we can make that happen, so.
Right. With right turn lanes, they don't have to be the same width as a regular through lane. They can be down to 10
Okay.
feet. Lester, do you got anything you want to add?
All right, council, further questions for staff?
So it looks to me like a lot of this is going to depend on how they manage that business and how successful it is, and how, maybe the first weekend when everyone's really excited, that's the real tough time. But a lot of these drink shops will do things like come out and take orders clear down the line and everything to try to get that moving forward. There's 25 spots is quite a few spots, even for a lot of the successful shops. So, but I agree. I think it's a tough one because you can't have stacking on either of those roads. It just can't happen. And I don't know, maybe the applicant can talk to that a little bit and what thoughts we have for that, because it just can't happen. I hate to have them go do all that and get it all ready and wonderful, and then 6 months down the road, we're just, people won't necessarily comply, and we have a real problem.
And also, you got to have 2 accesses in and out of that site, and nothing going in there is going to meet the access management guide that we have. If we hold to the access management guide, we've killed anything going in there. So there's got to be some exceptions. There has to be some give and take in order to allow something to go in there.
And I agree that this is a tough site, and we have to bend the rules a little bit.
Part of that is because it's had traditional access.
Yes.
So if it hadn't, and it was greenfield, and we were doing a larger piece, we would certainly stick to our plan. But because it had traditional access, we have to.
I agree with you that it had one traditional access, right? Not 2. But we require 2. I'm just bringing up these things for conversation. But the thought I had was that one off Telegraph, does it make sense? I mean, I see them do it all over. They do it at the car washes. They do it at places where they have it. It's built, but they put cones out in front so people can't drive in. It's like, hey, yeah, we have it in an emergency, or someone could move the cone and drive. And that's a management of the facility. So I don't think we can say to do that, but that was my thing, is make it more of a temporary access on the one on Telegraph. But I don't know if I'm just worried about that stacking ending up. I like the stacking that they have on the first building, but the second building seems shorter. Would it be better to stack it inside the site, is all I'm saying, and make that more of a temporary access? But those are just my thoughts.
I really like the conversation. This piece has been vacant for a while. It's hard to turn away a viable business. Of course, we want it done safely. When I first saw this plan, I thought that it was ingenious. I thought it was utilizing the property very well. My question, or what I'm just wondering, maybe it was covered in Planning Commission, but is there a consideration that because of the space, where you could have that other, rather than the cars that just line up, that comes off of Telegraph, that you'd come in off 300 and go down and stay outside of the car 1, 2, 3, and 4 to create another whole lane there? I think that it needs signage. I think it needs specific signage. And then I think that even maybe even part of the condition for the business license would be to, if it became evident that we needed cones or something to create a safer approach or exit, then I think that I appreciate the fact that we're working hard to make this work, because we need something on this location. We do.
Right. And I think on the site, if you stripe it, that would help a lot, to get the movement going the right direction, to allow parking and all that stuff. I think definitely striping, and that could be worked out during the construction drawings.
Can you point out where the window is? So I'm thinking in terms of stacking. Is the window to the west, to the furthest to the west?
It is.
Well, the windows will be along this wall right here on both these.
So they'll have multiple windows?
Yeah, I don't know, and they may, let me be sure. There's one of them that shows the building. I got to get rid of that stuff so it'll just confuse everybody. But they have the floor plans of the building, so you can see the windows are right here. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like everywhere else. You probably pay at this window, pick up at this window. I mean, they can do it either way. They can,
with an iPad when they're out there.
Yeah, so you have at least two windows to move product, or pay at the however. But there's So the windows, more than likely, they'll probably get their product. We have the applicant, they can come up and talk about what their plan is if they have them. But these are the windows right here where my arrows floating on both these buildings are somewhat the same, so.
Great. Thank you, Drew. Thank you, Paul. At this time, I'd like to move towards opening the public hearing. Again, if you just state your name when you come forward and keep your comments relevant. And I'll open the public hearing for anyone who'd like to come forward and speak on this item. All right, seeing none come forward, I'll close the public hearing. At this time, I'd like to ask the applicant to come forward and address any of the comments, questions that were just discussed with between staff and the council. And if you just state your name, please.
Yeah, my name is David Johnson, and I'm the engineer.
Keith Grundman, I'm one of the partners in it, and we have some answers to some of the things.
Great, we'd be happy to hear from you. Take the time you need to address some of the questions that have already come up.
So we've looked at, from the time that we met with the City Planning Commission, we've looked at the different comments that we got at that meeting. We've looked at different ways to restrict or direct traffic, either doing a right turn only there along Telegraph, a right turn in and a right turn out and a left turn in only up there. It just, when you start restricting people to right turn in and right turn out and left turn in, left turn out, it does make it kind of complicated for fire trucks to get in and out. So we're willing to work with your city team on how we do that, but that was the only real concern I had. When you start restricting turning, you can't get a fire truck to go through the site. As far as the room that we have along Telegraph there, we have about 20 feet. We originally thought that we needed to be 10 feet offset of the property line there. And so in between the existing sidewalk and our curb there, we have about 20 feet. So when we push that whole parking lot down, it gives us quite a bit of room to stack the cars along the southernmost part of the parking lot, and people can get in and out. It's almost like it'd be almost like a 24-foot space in between the parked cars and the cars that would be lined up trying to get their drinks. So I think that they would be able to get out. It will be a little bit tricky, but.
So this site plan is reflecting a 20-foot landscaping strip?
Well, just off of Telegraph, we thought that we read the code saying that we needed to be at least 10 feet off of the right-of-way line. And you have about, 8 or 9 feet there between the sidewalk and our property already.
So you could potentially maybe add some to your parking lot on the south side.
Yeah, and I looked at, I looked at what would happen if we put just a parallel parking along that, but you put parallel parking there and then you have the straight parking along the building. I don't know that we need more parking. We need more places to put cars that are trying to get through and trying to, do the order through the order pickup windows.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
So there's 25 cars on this site plan. And so, we've seen some drink shops and stuff that have cars spilling out onto the street. So you'd have to really have like 30 cars lined up for any cars to spill out onto the street. What is your, are you expecting always to have 25 cars lined up, or are you expecting, as the owner of this, to more like have maybe 10 cars? I mean, what's your expectations?
We'd love to have that many cars, but in reality, it won't happen that way. Our performance shows that out of each of our service buildings, we can service a car a minute. So that's 2 cars a minute throughput. And that should be plenty to eliminate stacking unless we just really get overwhelmed.
So most of the time, most days, it probably won't be an issue as far as just massive congestion, but maybe sometimes like on July 4th or something after the parade, you know, maybe get slammed. Is that kind of what you're expecting?
It could happen, but unlikely, I think.
So most of the time, it's going to be probably 10 cars.
Yeah, we're
rotating in
thinking
and
5
out.
cars on each building most of the time.
Okay.
It goes per our projection.
And would you be agreeable to put up whatever signage is recommended
Sure.
to help guide and direct the traffic?
Is it going to be containers or what? Do you guys have plans for what it's going to be? Or you haven't got that far?
We have some renderings there.
We started out wanting to do it with sea containers because I'm in that business in Salt Lake, and they're doing some pretty remarkable things with those these days. But we didn't get
Mr. Grunman?
a very good air for it, so we stick built.
Can you speak into the mic, please? Sorry, there's
Yeah.
people. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, so our plan was to stick build the buildings, and we made them wider also to give us more throughput room inside for the production. So we're actually 12 by 40 now instead of 8 by 40.
Can I ask one more question? Just curious for me, will you be operating the business or will a tenant be operating it or?
No, we'll be operating it.
Okay.
My other partner has several years' experience of a similar operation in Salt Lake.
Further questions for the applicant? Thank you, gentlemen. Council, I'll open it to you for discussion amongst the body.
Well, I don't want to repeat myself, but I truly think we need a right turn on 300 East, even if we can get 1 or maybe 2 car stacking is a bare minimum for me. I think the plan is it's a creative plan, right? Like they've provided as much as you possibly can on stacking, but I think that we got to have that right turn lane on 300 East, and I guess I'd like some input on the one on Telegraph.
So Councilman, would you be willing to give up some of the landscaping on 300 East in order to?
I don't know what that does for things I'm requesting. I'm just asking. Like,
okay.
I'm not saying I'm not. I don't think that affects the right turn. I would definitely say on 300 East, you're going to lose almost all your landscaping on that edge. So if you got to account for it on that side, then it makes sense. I'd almost rather lose a parking stall out of the 1 through 8 that's there, of those parking stalls, so that, because from what I understand, you don't need that much parking. And if that's not what we require, maybe you add some landscaping in the interior versus on the exterior to push out that street.
We've done a little bit of that before if necessary. We've traded that a little bit.
I like the idea of trading. I mean, I like this project. I think it's a fantastic design. You know, I was talking to somebody the other day, and when I was a kid, we used to drive our bikes downtown to Burger Stop and to Nison's, the old Merc, you know, that got torn down. And we haven't had a lot of places for kids to ride their bikes and hang out. And, you know, I like this project, but you know, traffic is a definite concern for sure. I mean, I'd be willing to trade some landscaping. You know, if we could get that right-hand turn lane on 300, I think we'd be golden with it, you know, and then we could just kind of monitor it. But you know, if that's possible to, you know, work out something with staff, maybe reduce some of the landscaping requirements, maybe just make some minor adjustments to the site plan, I would be in favor of that.
I think that's where I'm at as well, Councilman. I know we talked a little while ago about bad actors, drivers, that they'll do things, and you know, that's part of our society. It's unfortunate. I know Chief Williams can probably attest to that better than anyone. But you know, I guess that's where I'm at as well. Not to repeat myself, but if we can put some more workable space into this project and take some landscaping out, then I'm in favor of the project as well.
What about the discussion that you had brought, the idea that you had brought forth with, I don't know, having two lanes in it there that they both go one direction?
I think that's a consideration. Councilwoman is talking about where you come in off 300, you would stay on the outside boundary and then come into that line. And, you know, I think that the signage says if there's no room, don't turn in here, go around or whatever. But I think that there's room within this project to massage it and get it right. And I really appreciate the engineer and the part owner in their willingness to work with the city and make this difficult project to, make it work for everyone. So I think those are things that we need to look at.
I think there's one more comment, not to belabor the point, but Chief Williams let me know he's a little shy to come up and make comments in public, but he let me know this will be a very problematic business during the parade time. So I think it's just important to recognize that we do 3 or 4 parades a year, and that some of our businesses we do have to more or less shut down during that time. But if you're aware of that and understanding, we sure love our parades in Washington. So
Can he clarify that for us? Just kidding.
Yeah, I think
You
Chief
have to come
Williams.
out.
It will, but it shuts down, but then we'll all come get a Coke afterwards. Okay.
That's right. You can have walk up, and maybe you'd have as much walk up during a parade to run up as you would otherwise, but
I'll be on the golf cart.
Yep.
And also, I was going to point out, and I don't know if Chief Evans is listening or not, but I hope I'm not out speaking, but you talked about a fire truck's not going to drive into your property at this corner. They're going to stop at the curb and gutter and fight the fire. They're not going to, they can't get that close if you have a fire, just so you know that. Okay. Now, if I'm wrong, Chief Evans, jump on, but when you brought that up, I said, I don't need to worry about a fire truck going in there because that's too close for them. If flames are shooting out, they're going to be back a little bit. So.
Council, it sounds like we're getting some consensus on a right turn lane off 300, shifting the landscaping to a more narrow along Telegraph. Are there any other considerations or conditions that you're considering as you contemplate a motion?
Yeah, one more. That sign needs to meet our sign ordinance. I don't want to block in the
Site
triangle.
distance.
Oh man,
You're welcome.
I was struggling there. Sorry, the site triangle for that right turn on Telegraph. So it might have to be shifted to the east to meet the city's code on site triangles.
That's one of the conditions. All their signage has to meet city code. So yeah, I saw that too, but we can work through that. They may not be able to put it there, but they may have to turn it and face it out, this direction or something. Well, we can get through that stuff.
So the way it was located, it looked like it could potentially be in the site triangle based on the current stopping of Telegraph.
I actually really like both of those ideas as well. I like the right turn lane off 300, and I like the narrower landscape strip off of Telegraph. Any other additional conditions or thoughts?
Well, one of the conditions was that right out only on 300 that came from Planning Commission. How do we, I guess, mitigate that? Or do we just let people take their chance if the left-hand turn is open? Because if you've come off of 300 and gone straight through as you're going to the community center and coming up 300 East, you're doing about 35 or 40 coming through there, and that's not a lot of distance to stop.
There's ways to, you can always put the sign up there that says no left-hand turn. You end up with a problem then, and no one wants to hear the word, but the median always has to then, if you have to put that, that's always, and then, we might have to put that would be at this owner's expense, not the city's expense. If their customers aren't following it, they'll have to put that in. We don't like to put them in, but sometimes that is the answer to, if we have consistent problems, that's going to be the solution.
Do we have room for a median? I think I'd ask Paul.
A narrow strip of concrete.
Well, I'm just saying, are you thinking just a 6-inch curb or something, not a standard, usually they're 1.5 feet wide or? No, I'm talking if they did a median right down the yellow stripe on 300.
Over here, Paul, right along here.
So they're forced to go not on the property side, but on the street side.
Paul, come on up again. I know you'd rather just sit back there, and then just state your name again.
So you're asking, would you put in a raised curb there? You can, and if you did, yeah, you'd probably do. It's got to be one of those back-to-back type curbs, which is probably 10 inches wide or so. I would probably recommend putting in, they call it a pork chop, but it kind of forces the right in, right out. It's like a little.
My only concern with the pork chop is because we're requiring them to put a right turn lane, and then it's an even sharper turn to turn. As long as it doesn't, I'm just asking, maybe it won't affect it because the right turn lane's far enough to the right.
Right, you can, those are relatively, you can modify those pretty easily and make it so that you can get a right out
And
of
it
there.
could be half a pork chop, right? You wouldn't have to put the whole one coming down because it's your right turn in.
Could we do the half a pork chop too on the one on Telegraph? That's why it's a right only in.
Yeah.
So if we
I
did
like
a pork
Yeah, you
chop
can
on
make
that one, and
you can make the
Instead of a
curve
median.
so that it only takes right in.
Yep.
Movements.
I like that idea. It keeps the traffic. I know it might be a little inconvenient on the right turn in and right turn out, but the good thing is the downtown streets are pretty wide once you get turn left, and it's just a quick left, and you're back on.
And then the other concern with forcing them up 300 is you are forcing a lot of commercial traffic through a residential neighborhood. Just another thought, but if they go left, they're taking their chances.
Same as our community center, which is good comments, though. Thank you.
And your library and your school and everything else is up that street.
Yeah, those
And
are
your
those are all
cemetery.
self-imposed though,
And your
right?
yeah.
That the city chose to put in there with a lot of input from the community at the time, so.
Yeah, great contributions, Councilmember. Good job. I'm hearing 3 conditions: a right turn lane off 300. I'm hearing a narrower landscape strip off Telegraph, and I'm hearing a pork chop to right in off Telegraph and a pork chop for a right out onto 300. And I'll be happy to entertain a motion unless there's further comment or insight from the council.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve an ordinance for zone change request Z2127 for a planned unit development located at 14 North, approximately 300 East, with the conditions that we have a right-hand turn-in lane, that we look at adjusting the landscaping ordinances on that, and also that we have a pork chop on Telegraph.
And 300.
And 300.
Excellent. I have a motion by Councilmember Henderson.
Mayor, I'm happy to second that motion.
Second by Ivy. It's an ordinance. We'll do a roll call vote. Let's go Henderson.
Aye.
Ivy.
Aye.
Casperson.
Aye.
Coates.
Aye.
Martinson.
Aye.
The ordinance is approved unanimously. Congratulations. We have already had items 12 and 13. We do not have need to go to a closed session. At this time, I'll call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Martinson.
Second.
Second by Coates. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned.